Alright, so earlier today, Nintendo announced that the new Super NES Classic, or SNES Classic, is going to be coming out soon this year, just like how they did with the NES Classic, and it was a bit of a clusterfuck to try and get a hands on one of those bitches, because we got like freaking assholes buying as much as they could, and price gouging the fuck out of them due to taking advantage of all that capitalistic freedom. But anyway, about the Super NES Classic, it is more expensive this time than the NES Classic, which was around $60 US dollars, and this one is going to be priced around $80. And they say it's going to be released on September 29th of this year. And if I can find one, I'll definitely pick one up. If there's a pre-order for these available, I'll find out as well. And I've been watching other people talk about it online, and I am generally interested in this one. I was interested, of course, in the NES Classic back when it was out. You know, it wasn't easy to find in stores, which is why I never really got one. And most of the games I either already have played or like own already. Even though my NES unfortunately died a long time ago, all I have left is like found it, the Nintendo Zapper. And it's not the pussy orange one, it's the actual badass gray one that got people so scared that it might resemble a real, like, realistic gun. But so they changed the colors to that god awful orange one. Still works though on older TVs, because that's the only way you can really use this. You can't really, like, why is the duck flying away? Fuck you, dog! HD TVs are just inferior to this technical masterpiece. But anyway, back to today's news. The Super NES Classic is coming out, and as I'm holding this in my hand, it's taking up almost like my entire palm. But it looks like the Super NES Classic is going to be able to, I guess depending on how big your hand is, you can be able to grip all sides with your fingers. We'll see. I mean, I haven't really read any like size components. At least that's what I had trouble finding. But anyway, I'm glad to at least have this, and it still works, even though you can kind of hear shit like falling in and out of it. I don't know if it's a loose screw or a piece of thing, but it still works. Yeah, it's like if you look at a good look at it, it's all faded and all that shit. Of course, this part is still good. Inside's still clean. The light here is all chipped off, but again, it still works. The only thing that I have trouble with, oh man, like this, I just noticed I have some masking tape or invisible tape on here. It still works except for the power cord. The power cord needs to be like folded and then duct tape and then plugged in in order to even receive power at all. So if I can get my hands on an SNES Classic, I'll definitely pick it up. I mean, yeah, I can still technically find ways to make this work, but I'd rather not deal with the hassle. And there have been moments where sometimes my saved game files on my older SNES cartridges do not save, or it erases them. That's happened with Mario RPG. I think that's happened maybe only once with Mario World, but I haven't really used it in such a long time. I had to dust that thing off, since I last used it in order to get it ready for this video. The Super NES Classic, yeah, the price is a little higher than I would expect. I thought it would be around the same as the NES Classic, which was about $60 US. I thought this would be like maybe 65, 70, 80. Some people might find that a bit too much, but I guess that's worth it, considering that one of the 21 games that is going to be included is the never before released Star Fox 2. I remember looking at an issue of Nintendo Power, because I was a long time subscriber since like 87, I think, up until they stopped the publication. Reading an article about Star Fox 2, not 64. Although Star Fox 64 was my first Star Fox, it was a pretty good, introduction to the series. And for those of you who know, like, what I'm talking about, you played it, yeah, that's pretty much the feeling I had. But anyway, Star Fox 2 has never been released, like I said earlier, and this will be your official way of playing Star Fox 2 directly from Nintendo. So let's go ahead and go down the list of games that are going to be coming pre-installed with this game. Although I do hope that what they mean by pre-installed, is kind of like insinuating that there's going to be more games you can install on this? I mean, I did hear about hackers like going into the NES Classic and adding even more games to it. And I think that may have played a part in why Nintendo discontinued the NES Classic, because they found people who could just do their job, adding their games to their new hardware, which essentially makes the product even better when you have more games to choose from. But hey, you're trying to make, retro business in the 21st century, that's always a risk. But anyway, down to the 21 games that are going to be coming out. Of course, Super Mario World, don't really have to say anything about that. Pretty much the fourth Mario game that I absolutely loved after 3 came out. I don't know, like from Mario World to Mario 1, it's tough for me to choose between Mario 3 and Mario World, as which one is my personal favorite along those classic games. But it is a good product. Of course, next is Super Mario Kart. Started the series. It was good enough. I remember playing that a lot. It was even appealing to the fact that you could play as Bowser in some sort of way, even though it was kart, not like, fight and stomp on freaking toads and as opposed to Goombas. But anyway, I liked it. Of course, Zelda Link to the Past, one of the best games possibly ever made. And there's a bit of a rivalry, of course, between Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time as quite possibly the best Zelda games. Although I'm currently playing Breath of the Wild, that has now been entered into the debate as well. What is the best Zelda game? I'm not too far into it, but I am liking what I'm seeing. The only thing is it takes a while to get to places. I mean, even with fast travel. But, there's a lot to do, which gives it a lot of time to play. And so I can see what they're talking about, where they're coming from. And let's see, F-Zero. I had a friend who I grew up with who had F-Zero. He was like the only guy I knew who had that game. And so I got to play it back then, when there really weren't that much, demos, unless you could find it like at a retail store or Blockbuster or some, some shit. But F-Zero was never really on display for demo, at least back when I was a kid. And in my personal experience, I couldn't find one. So that was my only chance to play F-Zero. And it wasn't bad. Like, it wasn't a typical racing game. It was high speed for its time, using the kind of same, racing mapping system that Mario Kart, Super Mario Kart used. Now, Super Metroid, again, like Zelda Link to the Past, is debated as possibly being the best Metroid game out of the series. And I did rent Metroid at the time, Super Metroid, and I never really got real far. I wasn't really like an experienced Metroid player at the time, ever since the first Metroid came out on the NES. Although I did see it back then on the NES, but I never really owned it. I had like a cousin that had it or rented it. I don't know if he ever did. I'll probably ask him next time I see him. I remember playing on the Super NES, and I loved what I saw. Like, it really engaged in the story. It was fucking dark for a Super NES game. I was like, freaking dead scientists, explosion, like they're, like actual freaking death in a Super Nintendo game. Not counting anything undead and from like other games that are out at the time. But I was like, man, this is some serious shit here. I eventually did beat it after I got it on Virtual Console on the Wii. So I now have the full experience, personal experience of playing Super Metroid. Alright, now Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Good to have on there, and the thing is, unlike the NES Classic, the SNES Classic is coming with 2 controllers, not just one. And it would be extremely frustrating to only have one controller, and there's all these multiplayer games that are coming on this pre-installed SNES Classic. So that's a good move, Nintendo. You're getting better, as you pay attention more to what we're saying. But yeah, the next one, of course, is Super Punch-Out. I didn't play it back then. I did eventually later on in life, and I hear it is pretty good as well. Let's see, Super Castlevania. I believe that's 4. Yeah. I hear it's pretty good. I played maybe the first few levels, got into it. It was a bit difficult for me, but I do eventually want to complete that game. This could be my chance. Donkey Kong Country. One of the best Donkey Kong games probably ever made. I have so much fun feelings and memories, feelings, I guess you can call that too, of playing that game as well. I owned the soundtrack on the cassette when I got the Nintendo, catalog from Nintendo Power. I said, order that shit. That game was amazing, especially when they gave me the VHS, which I have in there, but somewhere, but it's buried. I'm not gonna try and find it. And they were promoting that product, and then they did mention in that promotional video that they were going to put the music on the CD or just make a soundtrack. And I was like, all right, as soon as you do it, I'm getting it, and I did. And it took me I don't know how long to finally arrive in the mail. If they said 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, but it felt like half a year. When it finally came out, I listened to it so much, I think I started to wear the tape, but luckily I think it still works. But then I got eventually the soundtrack on CD, so it's all good. Mega Man X. Only Mega Man X game that I've actually beaten. 2, I did get to Sigma at the end, but then he Wolverine clawed my ass. Kirby Superstar, never played really any much of the Kirby games. I played demos and stuff, but it's good. I mean, I have friends that are fans of Kirby. And there's also Kirby's Dream Course, another game, Kirby game next to Kirby Superstar. That's 2 Kirby games I see. So if you're a big Kirby fan, that'll be a good choice for you to have. Final Fantasy III, which is also another good game that came on the Super Nintendo. I forgot which one it actually is. I think it's 6, but they called it 3 due to the whole Final Fantasy localization fuckery. But anyway. And then of course is the original Star Fox. I did play it for a little bit, but I never beat it. Of course I like that. Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. I rented that game quite a bit back then, and I did beat it multiple times. I actually liked it. And I remember I was talking to my dad at the time about getting it for me. I don't know, I think I was maybe adolescent or early teens around the time it came out, but I remember I kept asking my dad to get that game for me, but he was always worried about it being too expensive. This was back during a time when video games did not have a standard, retail price, kind of like what they do today at $50 or $60. Back then, buying a new game can cost you from $50 to $80. It was just ridiculous. And I remember one time I was at Target and I said, Dad, there's Yoshi's Island there, Super Mario World in there. And he said, how much is it? And I said, it's $54, 88 or something like that. Wow, man, my memory, fucking awesome. But I remember I told him that and his eyes were like, really? He really liked that price. But yet, he still held off on it. And my dad, he did have the money, but he just didn't want to spend so much constantly on video games for me, because I guess he felt I had to earn it back in those days, do this or do well in school or that. But it is what it was. I unfortunately never owned the game. I never got it, and I guess this will be a good time to actually own it. Super Mario RPG Legend of 7 Stars, one of my favorite games on my personal list of best games I've ever played in my life. Easily in my top 5. It might be 4th place, on my personal list of best games. And I'm glad they included this on there, because I know if anyone who's ever heard the game and never played it, this will be their chance to get it as well. Of course, you can also get it on the Virtual Console, but hey, with this, it's kind of pushing it out there. That's what I like about these classics. Contra 3. I only played the first Contra and maybe a little bit of the second one. They're pretty good. I had never played 3, so this will be a good chance. Secret of Mana I have on the Wii Virtual Console. I kind of got past the first act, but I never really got to the second. I'm lost, in the dark woods or something shit like that. And I don't know where to go. I would have to, if I were to play the game, I would have to start from the very beginning. And if it's here, hey, I'll have to start from the very beginning. Earthbound. I also never owned or played from beginning to end, though when it got released on the Virtual Console, and I did make a video earlier on my channel about when that news came out, that Nintendo released it, and I was like, guys, it's out. If you never played it or want to get it again, here it is. I ended up getting it, and I got pretty far. I think I'm in. I forgot the name of the town, but it's like the summer town. You know, where that's how far I got before I just abruptly stopped to focus on a new game release. But I do plan to finish it someday, so I'll look forward to that. And next is the last one, Super Ghouls and Ghosts. It's Ghouls and Ghosts. One of the hardest games ever made. I maybe have only gotten past like the first boss, and then when I get to the next levels, I just get totally ass pummeled by every incoming monster that comes my way. And being the boxers, it's pretty easy for them to ass pummel me. So yeah, I really like what they're doing with the Super NES Classic. I hope that they don't, limit release it. Or they just stop, production of it after being out for so much, only like a few months. I don't know how long the NES Classic was out for a bit. That detail escapes me for a little bit, but it wasn't long. I don't know why they did that. Did they feel like they were losing money? Did they think that scalpers or, price gouging assholes were taking too much advantage of it? I don't know why, but it was a bad idea for them to discontinue it. I'm sure there's at least like 1 million people in the world right now that want an NES Classic but are now unable to, unless they're able to have like $1,000 just sitting around to feed one of these fucking scalpers. And I don't know, I just foresee that happening too with the Super NES Classic as well. I'm gonna see if I can actually get it, pre-ordered for me, because that seems to be the only way to get your hands on these things, is to frickin' pre-order it. Now, of course, for celebrating this announcement, I went in my closet and dug up this old dusty gem. Wow, I came out fast. My old Super Nintendo box, and it's in pretty decent condition. Not the best, but I just thought, this is my chance to show it off, even though I haven't touched it in almost 2 decades, because after I took it out, I never had a need to use it anymore, but I didn't want to toss it out anyway, because I'm that type of collector. Not only do I hold on to my game cases and stuff, I hold on to my system boxes too. Of course, with the exception of NES, the first one, because I was only 6 or 7 years old at the time, and I had no control over what my parents or my grandmother, who did buy my NES for me at the time, what they did with the trash. Although I don't consider this trash, and I'm sure many of y'all would agree with me. Hold on to your shit, because once it ceases production, just the box itself, even if it's not in perfect condition, can have some sort of value. Looking at this right here, check out our advanced power of Super NES games. SimCity. Yeah, the first one, F-Zero. Pilot Wings, and I think it got, torn off there. So that label of Pilot Wings is unfortunately lost. But I hear Pilot Wings is a good game. That's it. And coming soon, Zelda 3, and not Link to the Past. I guess that was before they settled on the title. Super Play Action Football, American football, for clarification of my international viewers. But I love the Super Nintendo. It's one of my favorite systems of all time, and it was one of the systems where I thought I didn't see any problems with. I've heard of other videos where they do test drops of the Super NES to test its durability, and they drop it from I don't know how high, and it just still works after being dropped. I know one guy did it with the Switch recently, and it survived. But I think the only reason it survived is because one of the Joy-Cons took all of the blunt of the fall, and it's a detachable part, so it came off, and it pretty much spared everything else. But from that high that it dropped, that says something about the durability of Nintendo's products. And you forget the seal of approval. Do the test drop from over 1,000 feet, and that'll be your approval of a Nintendo product. That's how you can tell. Now, if you want to read more on this, I'll include a link in the description of the article of the SNES Classic directly from Nintendo itself, Nintendo.com. And you can read more of there. They did a pretty good job on the webpage, even Alfred Animation. So again, September 29th this year for $80 US. And for those who live overseas or out of US, you can probably check how much it's going to cost in your area. I'm sure there's ways for you to find out. But anyway, yeah, this is Dan. And as long as they don't limit, the quantities of this, I have no objections to the SNES Classic.